What is up, everybody? It is a Tuesday, and Tuesday means we are finally back. Happy New Year to all. Welcome to the Orion Podcast. What is up? Welcome back. Special guest tonight. Zach is gone. As you can see, it's just me and our special guest, Mr. One, the legend, Jim Sammons.
That just means I'm old.
Well, it can mean you're old. It can just mean that you've accomplished great feats
In a lot of years.
Well, with gray hair comes great wisdom, as they say.
Oh, okay. Can we record that? Tell that to my wife.
I don't know. I'm telling myself that because mine's coming in pretty thick. I was getting my hair cut the other day, and no kidding, man. I looked down, and it was a black gown, and I went, "Oh my God!" And that lady started laughing at me. She was just like, "Yeah, I heard that happens as you get older." And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks."
Yeah,
You're like
I finally renewed I had to renew my driver's license, and I finally had to switch the hair color from brown. It's like, it's on there brown. They're like, really brown? I'm like, okay. It's pretty much straight up gray now. Giving in.
Hey, sometimes you just got to. I mean, I guess we could go with the Just for Men sponsorship. Is that still a thing? Are they still even out there?
I don't know. There's a lot of those old men sponsorships that I need. I'm not going to say which ones.
This could go real wrong real quick. Oh man. So there's a lot of people though that may not know the whole Jim Sammons story. So one of the things I've always liked to do on this Orion podcast is kind of go back just a little bit and get into the before you were here. So kind of let's talk about how you got into the outdoors and where did all this come from?
Well, I mean, I've always fished since I was a kid. Always loved to fish. I had an uncle in Canada actually, and I live here in San Diego. And I had an uncle in Canada that I would go visit, and he would take me fishing. And he really instilled my love for fishing. My father couldn't care less about fishing. So, I mean, there was no connection there, but I would get my mom to take me fishing. She'd drop me off with a rubber raft when I was a kid down on San Diego Bay, and I'd go fishing. So I always had a love of fishing and a real strong love of the ocean. Being, again, here in San Diego, I was a surfer my whole life. And we used to paddle out. I mean, just to the relation to the kayaks, I mean, and the self-propelled and all that. And we would paddle out on our longboards when there was no surf with a backpack and a fishing rod in the backpack and paddle out and go fish the kelp beds off our surfboards.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of my always doing that sort of thing. We'd go down to Baja on surf trips and always bring our fishing rods, and the same thing. If there's no surf, we're paddling out and fishing off the surfboards. So it kind of started that. And then I was lucky enough to meet my father-in-law, or future father-in-law at the time, who was a kayaker, loved paddling, touring boats. And so I was introduced to paddling, and again, loving the ocean and getting in these boats that were so fast, 18, 20 foot long touring boats.
Oh yeah.
and really learning how to paddle, I got this love of paddling. But I always still had that fishing thing. And the thing is, the touring boats really were not great for fishing, not really conducive. So, when the first rotomolded boats came out, and I first saw the very first ocean kayak scuppers,
Mhm.
and then the Scupper Pros, back then it was just like, okay, that makes sense.
Right.
And it kind of changed my life. I became an addict, and there was nobody else. I can't say there was nobody, because there was a few guys. But I mean, it was a very, very small community back then of kayak anglers, and if you went out on a kayak and you saw somebody else on a kayak, you knew them. It's just, you knew them. There's no doubt about it. It was very rare that you saw a new guy. And then the thing was, this whole thing snowballed for me. Was I loved sharing it. I loved talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was it. I would get off the water, and then I'd spend another hour on the beach talking to people, because people would care. And back then, I mean, literally, because I was only fishing offshore.
Right.
That's all I did. I started offshore in a kayak, and that's all I ever did. So people would see us coming in with, good sized fish, and nobody else was kayak fishing. And it's like, you guys are nuts. You guys,
they still say that though.
You guys are the crazy guys out there on the kayaks, and tell me about it. And so I love talking about it. And I had an extra kayak, and so I'd take friends. And my buddy was like, dude, you love talking about this so much, you should try and do something with it. And I started a little guide service back in '94, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about when I started guiding. And I started making rod holders, because there was no companies making rod holders.
No. There was nobody making nothing back in '94.
Not making anything. And then I started making custom bait tanks, because we're a very live bait fishery here.
Mm-hmm.
So I started making custom live bait tanks, and I was making all these other accessories. I was making game bags, and this is well before any of this stuff was out there.
Oh yeah, way before.
And yeah, so and then I was rigging people's boats for them. I was never selling boats. I was never in the business of selling boats, but I became kind of working with a local kayak shop. And so he would send me business, and I would help him, and it just became a good relationship back then.
And the tinkering with the boats back when the boats were first coming out, before all the accessories and everything was really around, I mean, that was oddly satisfying.
Super fun.
It was.
And it's so funny now. I talk to people, and it's like, God, I hate to drill a hole in a kayak. I'm like, really? Where's my drill? Because I'm going to punch some holes in this freaking kayak right now. Because you got so comfortable doing it. It's like, and if I make a mistake, it's no big deal. We can fix it. It's like, yeah. But I was, like I said, I was rigging people's boat, and everything, of course, PVC. You're making everything out of PVC.
Trips to the hardware store over and over and over.
Yeah,
it was like 45s and 90s, and just figuring out how everything would glue together.
Right. And how are you going to attach this to the kayak?
Yep.
And I mean, it was just it was so much fun. Like you said, just tinkering and figuring it out, and then the electronics.
Mm-hmm.
Taking, back then, the only fish finder that was really available at that time that made sense for the kayaks was the Humminbirds.
Yep,
because they had the small portables, little guys. They had the wide 100. I think before that they had it may have just had fish finder on it, for all I remember.
Yeah, I've seen those. Yep.
And I actually found like 6 old fish finders in my garage. I just went through a full garage clear out, and I found a progression of all these old fish finders to the piranhas and all that. And what became a favorite of mine was there was a housing that Humminbird was making for ice fishing. a portable unit that they would make for ice fishing. And they actually called it a portable because it came with a suction cup
Right.
for the transducer. And you'd stick that on, and it worked great. And then you start to go, well, it would work great, really well, as if we went up through the scupper hole. And I kind of devised a way to do that. And like you said, it was just fun. Tinker, figuring it out, always figuring out a way that worked.
And it kind of is still fun. I mean, even when the new boats come in, I've kind of regressed back to, like, I cut all my bungees off and just put my own color of bungees on them now. Just because, like, when the bike came in, it was like, let's have some fun.
Right. But I mean, I'm not going to lie. Companies like Yak Attack, my God, they've made it so easy.
Yep.
They have made it so easy and such great products. I mean, yeah, I enjoy doing that stuff, but when I can just go, okay, Yak Attack has a solution for that. Yak Attack has a solution for that. Yak Attack has a solution for that.
It's made it so easy. Everything from camera booms to just stuff to hold stuff.
Right.
I mean, you can literally take anything you want with you, and Yak Attack or some of the other companies probably has something to hold it.
Yeah. No, they've like I said, they've made it so easy, from the old coolers on the back, because that's what I used to use. I had a cooler on the back and then started making these bait tanks and using coolers, and then making fiberglass ones and all that. And then, of course, everybody says the milk crate. Funny enough, I have never had a milk crate in the back of my kayak ever. And everybody thinks that's like the beginning. For me, it never was. I never liked the milk crate. My wife would joke with me because whenever we were on any kind of a shopping trip, whether it was going through Costco or a sporting goods store or anywhere, I was always on the hunt for the perfect container.
Yeah.
The perfect container that would fit in the back. And back then, again, of course, for a Scupper Pro tank well.
Right.
What was going to, and it was because it was a kind of a different shape and long and narrow, and getting something that would fit. It's like, honey, we have 20 coolers at home that you have tried. And I'm like, well, still searching for still trying to find the perfect one.
I remember my first crate. It was a toolbox, like a small toolbox. It's probably about the size of an Orion 25, and it just found it at Walmart walking aisles, and I was like, I think that'll fit. Come home, drilled some attachment points, and off we went. It was a great crate.
And I started traveling a lot. I started guiding down in southern Baja, and then it was like, okay, well, what do I need to make it easier on a travel type trip? Well, you never know what you're going to get in a kayak seat. And of course, these were the old, clip-ins. Okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to have in the way of a seat, and I don't know what I'm going to have in the way of rod holders on a rental kayak at some destination. It's like, okay, let's make a seat that has rod holders attached. and we did that. And then it's like, okay, well, I'd really love to have a live bait tank down here in Baja. But how do I travel with something like that? And so I started making the out of a soft cooler. And and then we're talking a full circulating, not an aerator, a full circulating, water in, water out, live bait tank, and figuring out a way that would sturdy enough that would hold 6 gallons of water or more. And so like I said, we started tweaking with that, and then I started having those manufactured. And so I was making these portable bait tanks and selling them to people. And then I teamed up with Shimano. And because I kind of ran out of steam on being able to do this, because the company that was going to make them for me said, okay, we've made you 100 of them now. Now, if you want to buy them, you need to buy a container full.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this sport is not mature enough to support. If I bought a container full of those bait tanks,
you'd still be selling
20 years ago, I'd still have them. So it's like, okay, no. But then Shimano approached me and asked me to work with them on one. So then Shimano actually made a portable bait tank. And it was really cool working with Shimano on that many, many years ago.
Wow. Now, from that point, you kind of moved towards the kayak fishing show. How did how did the show start? What's the show look like in its infancy?
Well, I mean, there was this whole transition, if you will, in my life anyway. I was a truck driver. I work, my guiding business was a sideline,
Hmm.
and I worked for Pepsi Cola and had a back injury. Which, if anybody has ever watched any of my shows or any of my live shows and stuff, I'm always complaining about my back. I mean, my back is still erect to this day. But I couldn't go back to that job, and so started guiding more full time, and so that way I could work for myself, work when I could.
Hmm.
And because of that, I was becoming more close with sponsor companies,
Right.
Ocean Kayak specifically, back then. And I would go to trade shows with them. And during one of my guided trips down into Mexico, I'm kind of backtracking a little bit here, but one of my guided trips down to Mexico, a client shows up and he goes, Jim, I'm not really here to fish. I want to videotape what you're doing. I'm like,
Oh, wow.
oh, that's cool. Because I would always have a support boat with us.
Right.
Because you're fishing down in Baja, somebody might hook a marlin that's going to drag them 10 miles offshore. And we had that happen many times. So I always had a support boat. He goes, I just want to be on the boat and videotape what's going on. And I'm like, well, that's cool. And then he showed me the finished product. I'm like, this is awesome. So I bought myself a camera, started
Mhm.
filming the trips with clients, started doing little tip videos. I have a pretty high reaching one way back when it was the Waiters of Death. And so I was doing that. So anyway, so I had all this stuff, and this was like way back, way before Facebook. I barely had
You're out there with the
website.
VHS tape,
Yeah, mini DVs.
mini
And-
DVDs.
And I was going to trade shows for Ocean Kayak, and I met Ken Whiting,
Hmm.
who is the owner of Heliconia Press. Back
Right.
then it was Heliconia Press. Now it's just Heliconia. And I pitched an idea to him about my kind of thought of doing a show. I don't know if anybody remembers Warren Miller films. I was an avid skier as well. And Warren Miller would make these ski films, and they were super cool. It was just cool people going to cool places with some really good music in the background, and it was just fun. It wasn't hardcore about the skiing. It was about the location, and it was about the people. And I'm like, I want to make a fishing show like that. And Ken's like, I don't know the first thing about doing TV shows, but what I do know is making DVDs.
Right.
So he goes, let's make a DVD. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And I had this conversation with him at a trade show. Now, I've pitched this idea to anybody I knew or I ever met that had anything to do with video production.
Mhm.
And everybody says, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. And then they blow you off.
Oh yeah. A few weeks later, then that call doesn't come back.
Yeah. So I was expecting the same blow off. And I think it was about a month later, I got a call from Ken. He goes, I'm setting up a trip to Florida. We're going to do a DVD because let's do it. And, along the ideas of what you're thinking. And so we did. We made this DVD called Kayak Fishing Game On. And we went to Florida, Alaska, Baja,
Hmm.
and the Chesapeake Bay. I think those were the ones
Oh,
that were
wow.
on the DVD.
It's a big circle.
Yeah, and it was super cool. The very first trip, people want to know why I'm not a fan of Florida. Very first trip, like every other trip I've ever had to Florida, the weather was lousy and the fishing was worse. And I know Florida has amazing fishing.
And that was the day Jameson Redding was conceived.
Yeah. I have had the worst luck in Florida of any place I've ever been. But our next shoot was Baja, and we got 2 marlin. And I mean, it was amazing. We actually sat through a hurricane.
Oh, wow.
But we got 2 marlin on the very first day. So it's like, woohoo.
Yes.
And then after that, we went to Alaska and had an amazing trip in Alaska. And just everything about it was cool. And so the video came out great. And like I said, it had fun music and great people. And we're like, well, let's do this again. So we were right in the process of making Game On 2. And we were contacted by the World Fishing Network, which was in its infancy at the time. And they needed content.
Mhm.
And they're like, excuse me, could you guys maybe turn this video into a TV show? And I'm like, and Ken's like, I don't know anything about making TV. And they're like, we will teach you. We need content. And there was also this thing that WFN back then was owned by a Canadian company, or it was a Canadian company. And Canada has Canadian content laws.
Yes,
so
they do.
They have to show a certain amount of content that is made by Canadians. Now, I'm from San Diego. Ken's from Canada. So because the production company was in Canada, they pulled us in and helped. And unlike the normal, what you call an air buy, and this is if people don't understand these, nobody is getting paid to be on TV. Okay.
No.
It's
a lot of work.
You buy the airtime from the network, and then you sell the sponsorships, and hopefully you sell enough to make the show, and maybe make a little bit of money. I mean, like I said, nobody's getting rich on the TV side of things at all. Particularly now. Back in the old days when the networks owned the TV shows, it was a different story. But by the time we got into this, like I said, it was this whole air buy. Well, because they needed Canadian content, we didn't have to, they weren't paying us to make the show, but they didn't charge us to make the show either, to buy the airtime initially. Now, as the years went on, I was on the air for 13 years. So as the show went on, then things changed. And of course we went to other networks as well. But so that's how the whole thing kind of turned into this. Sorry, something popped up in the middle of my screen. It turned into this whole change of life for me. And, I traveled the world, met a lot of amazing people and did some amazing things. And, people ask me what like the best part of what I have done. I mean, I've made some amazing catches. I've been to some great places, but I mean, it's the people I have met while doing this.
Yep.
I've got friends. I literally have friends around the world, that I regularly have contact with. I actually have a friend that I met on a trip in Sweden who's from Germany, whose daughter is coming to stay at my house this week.
That's awesome.
Because she had some classes. She had to come in for a week of classes. And he contacted me and said, hey, can my daughter come and stay with you? I'm like, of course. And I went to a trip to Thailand with friends I met from Sweden. I've been all over with people. And of course, not only the people around the globe, but then, the great people I've met through the companies I've worked with, all the people at Jackson Kayak. I mean, I was with Ocean Kayak for a long time, and I have some great memories and great relationships there. And then when I moved over to Jackson Kayak, it couldn't have been better. I mean, because everybody there was paddlers and they were so welcoming, and to be able to work with everybody over there was so amazing. And I consider these weren't just people I worked with. I mean, I've got friends that I get to know everybody, lifelong friends, I think.
Well, now, and that is one thing. I mean, in my experience in working with Jackson Kayak, it's like you come in and everything just keeps growing and evolving, and you keep meeting new people. This thing right here in the Doc Talk is, allowed me to talk to you. I mean, I'm in Indiana, you're in California. The chances of us running into each other at, Steak and Shake are slim to none.
Right.
So, it encourages opportunity to get out there and meet new people.
Well, and we were kind of talking about that before the show started. It's like, the yearly trade shows.
Yep.
That back then, before how easy it is now with the internet and, things like StreamYard here that we're using. Back then, it's like you only saw these people once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of your connection with people. So it was always great to go to the trade shows. Now it's like, it's so easy to jump on here. It's like,
yeah, you have face-to-face with anybody in the world in 2 seconds.
Right. It's actually funny. I remember I was in my first trip to New Zealand, another awesome country. If you guys have a chance to go to New Zealand, it's awesome. And some great people. I actually have a friend from New Zealand who's going to be here in 2 weeks. But I was there the very first time. And this was back when I would go on a trip and I would tell my wife, it's like, well, I'll see you when I get back.
Yeah.
Because it was so expensive to make a long distance phone call. We didn't have Skype or anything like that. I mean, I would do my guided trips down in Baja and I'd be down there for 2 weeks and I wouldn't talk to my wife because it was like $5 a minute to make a phone call.
Yep. And you always had to worry about running out of minutes.
Right. So I'm in New Zealand and somebody goes, oh, there's this new thing, Skype. You should try it. And I'm not going to lie. It was a big change for us. And it really gave me the ability to continue doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
So, because my wife was feeling like, I don't like this, you being gone, because we had, kids, and I don't like this, you being gone and having zero contact and all that. And now it's like every night I get off the water, I ping her, and it's like, hey, babe, we're off the water for the day, and there's not this, oh my God, what's the long distance charge? Can I make this collect?
1-800-COLLECT. Remember all the commercials back in the day? That's like a big thing. And then it's like, boom, first Nokia cell phone. Gosh, Jim, you're making me feel old. It's a sad time. Now, you moved to Jackson, the birth of the Kraken. Rudy Yarworth was asking, he wants to hear more about how the Kraken came to be. So,
Rudy, and I know you're saying how you designed the Kraken. I'm not that guy. I would never claim that. Okay. I've had a lot of input on designs of boats, and I can go back to the first ocean kayak boats that they were making as fishing boats. The Prowler, I had a lot of input on the design of that boat. On the Trident, I had even more input, but I never designed a boat in my life. I've never designed one, and I never want to make that claim. Tony Lee designed the Kraken.
Yep.
But what happened there is Tony Lee took the input that I gave him, and I still won't say it wasn't all mine. I consulted with all my offshore friends and we bounced ideas off each other. And then I took that to Tony Lee, and then Tony Lee and I butted heads on stuff, but it was a collaboration, but I came to him with ideas and he made them work. He is the designer 100%. And I never want to take credit for designing the boat because I didn't do it. I'd never, I wasn't on CAD. I didn't have a planer in my hand. I never did that. And I know guys who have claimed to design boats in the past. And it's like, no, all you got to do is add one extra word. Say, I helped. Yeah. I helped design it. And I'll be happy to say I helped design the Kraken. Now, where did that come from? It came from wanting a big water boat that could handle surf, because some big water boats don't handle surf, and we are launching and landing through the surf zone here. Mm-hmm. That I could get my rods down inside the hull, that I could put a game bag down inside the hull and get those fish down on ice. I wanted to get my butt off the floor of the boat,
Yeah.
which was the ocean kayak boats. And again, I mentioned at the beginning, my introduction to paddle sports was being in an 18-foot glass boat.
Mhm.
These boats glide. I mean, you put a paddle in your hand, you literally, the whole idea of paddling when you're in that kind of a boat is you actually put the paddle in the water and you pull yourself past it. It's not dragging the paddle through the water. So any way you can get even close to that, having a good paddling boat was always key to me. And Tony did an amazing job for boats that honestly was much more stable than I wanted it to be. Because I would joke around. It's like, if these guys are standing up in this boat, it's too stable. I don't want it that stable. Let's trim more off of it. And then these suckers who spend a lot more time standing up than I do are jumping up and standing up in it. So it still had amazing stability, but had great paddle ability, and it handled the surf really, really well. So it's sad that it was such a short-lived project, but it was kind of the way the market was going, and I totally get it. Everybody thinks they need pedals, and everybody thinks they need a barge. Everybody thinks they need a boat that's super duper stable that you can stand in.
Yeah.
And when you're fishing offshore and you're doing mostly paddling all day and trolling, you don't need to stand,
No.
So, but that's the way the market went. And if the boats aren't selling, they gotta move on. And I understand that,
But it's the Kraken, just like the OG Kusa and the Cuda and some of the other boats that have come to pass, the big rig. Let's just be honest. All of them have almost like had this legend about them as they come in and exit the production line. It's like they're still faithful users, and you still see them out there talking about all the OG boats, and the Kraken is one of them.
I see Chris Funk is saying, "Not this, everyone. I still paddle."
He's a legend too.
Oh,
You just don't know
one
it
of
yet.
one of the funnest guys to fish with ever, because you just laugh the whole time. It doesn't matter what the fishing's like. It's just you have a great time. Yeah, I mean, I love the Kraken. I still have 4 of them. I have 2 of the 13.5s and 2 of the 15.5s.
Now, which is it? Which one's the best one?
In my opinion,
Yeah, 13.5er.
15.5 hands down.
15.5. There you have it.
I like long boats. Now, remember, I came from long touring boats. The Scupper Pro was 14 feet 9 inches. And I always said, let's make, and when we made, again, working with Ocean Kayak, when we made the Prowler was right around 15 feet, and the Trident was a little bit more. So I always liked long boats. And when I get into a 13-foot boat, to me, it feels really short.
I can imagine.
I mean, it feels really short. And people are like, well, why? Why would you prefer a longer boat? Yeah, you don't have the maneuverability. But again, offshore, I don't need maneuverability. I need to go straight. I need it to glide. And the difference that happens when you chop 2 feet, now that's a fair amount. You chop 2 feet of water line off the boat. Well, you're out there in any kind of a short interval chop. Well, now the boat is doing this, where if that short interval chop, you add 2 feet to your boat, now the boat stays on top of that.
Stays on top.
And instead of slowing down each time, it stays on top and continues to glide.
It would be like running a big boat, for example. You stay on plane.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And what I always say, and again, I love them all, dude. I mean, I've got my pedal boats, although I haven't used it much because I haven't fished hardly at all, honestly, the last year. My back and I had shoulder surgery, and I've just been a wreck. I'm just now getting to the point where I'm ready to get back on the water. But I mean, I like the pedal boats. They have their purpose. I love my Torpedo. I mean, I put the Torpedo, and I love my Blue Sky, and
Yep,
put the
you've had some times in
Torpedo
the
on
Blue
the
Sky.
Blue Sky. I love that thing. That thing is so much fun to fish off of. But I always say it's like the thing that peddlers will never experience that paddlers do, and that's glide. And that's that silent glide through the water. The only sound is the water dripping off your blade if you're a good paddler, and that's it. If you're going to be a paddler, by all means, take a paddling course, learn how to paddle properly, because that makes a huge difference, and invest in a good paddle. I use a Werner Callista. It's a foam core blade. It's a $500 paddle, but it's your motor.
Yeah.
I always say, would you rather have a Porsche motor or a Volkswagen motor? It's like, I want the best paddle as I can get if I'm going to be a paddler, and I'm going to have that in my hand all day. And then you get in, and if you have a glassy day, and you can just move that boat without a sound, and you pick up the paddle, and it just continues to glide. You can just slide up on things, which you just don't get with a pedal boat. So like I said, they all have their purpose. When we say a different tool for a different job. But I love that part of paddling.
I find that even as I've moved to pedal boats more, I still use my paddle a lot. Like if I get X amount of distance away from where I know that I'm going, it's like I pick up my paddle as I approach the area and just start paddling in rather than, running up to it with my pedals. I mean, you see things, especially with this live imaging. Been out on a boat a few times, and you can almost watch as that trolling motor gets closer to those fish. You can just watch them go and sit down on the bottom. And they know. I mean, they know exactly what's coming. And, I've taken that and I pick up the paddle because I know that if I can move in just a little bit quieter, that makes a big difference.
Oh, it really does. I mean, I've told people so many stories about interactions, and that's the thing about being offshore. And again, it's not just about the fishing. It's so much about just being out there and the interactions I've had with sea life, because I am just silent. I mean, just sliding right over and next to whales. We have a real sea lion issue here. We have tons of sea lions. They steal your bait, they steal your fish, but we also have a lot of seals, and there is a difference. But the seals will wrap themselves up in the kelp and fall asleep. And so you'll be out in the kelp beds and you'll see a seal's head up above, and it'll be laying like this. But so you can paddle right up to them. And I've literally come up and nudge them with the nose of my kayak and wake them up. And then they just blow up. So kind of being mean, waking them up. But I mean, it's just that interaction that you get with sea life in a kayak, and particularly, in my opinion, in a paddling boat, that is like no other. And it's such the appeal of being out on the ocean and being out there in a little tiny boat.
I think even like just around the lake, even, obviously fish will come in, just pretty much run into the boat. But just what's around the bank. I mean, deer, different things on the bank.
Right.
I mean, they don't even know you're there a lot of times. It's like they're surprised to see you as you are them when you look up and catch that first glimpse. I mean, you can just about get up to something and touch it a lot of times.
Yeah. And that's one thing, like I said, and not to bash one company or anything, but just my personal experience. I always hear people in Hobies and they're so loud because I don't know if it's something the way if it's hitting the bottom of the boat or just the mechanism, but it's like clunk, 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 clunk. It's like,
yeah.
And again, maybe it's because there's a lot of newer guys in them and they're not using it as efficiently. I haven't spent a lot of time in a Hobie, so, but like I said, it's just that whole silence and where you just hear nothing other than that glide of your boat. And I'm not going to lie, there's some paddling boats that are noisy as heck. I love Jackson kayaks. the Cuda 14, if I had somebody who wasn't heavy enough in it, because I would use those in my guide business when I first switched over. If I had somebody who wasn't heavy enough in that boat, it was very noisy because the scuppers were so big and so loud. If I got somebody, like if I was in the boat, it wasn't an issue because it got them more down into the water. And so it wasn't catching water in them. But I'd paddle next to a client who maybe wasn't big and wasn't carrying all the gear I was. And you could just hear it like glug, 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 glug. And you could hear the water glugging in the scuppers.
Yeah.
So,
and those,
I mean, there's noisy boats out there.
Those older boats like that too. I mean, they had a more bulbous shape to them, and they really set up a lot higher than a lot of the newer boats do. I mean, you look at the Cuda, like you said, the big rig set up high, but it was 4 feet wide. And then what was the Coosa's always set up high, but that was kind of the Coosa thing, and everything kind of followed the Coosa out the door. But yeah, the cruise set up really high, and the big tuna.
Yeah. One of my favorite boats from Jackson, you know, in the paddling realm was the Liska.
Absolutely.
That thing
it happens every
great.
show.
It was nimble. Chris. Who are you calling bulbous? Yeah, I mean that Liska was light and lively. It paddled well for the type of boat it was. The bite does pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean they're decent. It just
they
all feel. I was in. We did a shoot in Florida, and I had the Bite FD. That boat just felt tiny to me.
I can imagine if being in a 14, 15-foot boat, that the Bite at 11 feet, some odd inches would feel very small.
Yeah, you're just used to having so much bow and stern. But like I said, they certainly have their place, and we caught a lot of fish off that Bite, freshwater and salt. So it was actually, when I first got on it, it felt really small. And then as the week of shooting and fishing progressed, it showed itself as a very, very capable boat. You know, when you jump into a short boat like that, it feels kind of weird to you. But then after spending a weekend, it's like, that's a very capable little craft.
It is.
It did really well. I liked it.
I tell you what, it was something that, you know, I like the Liska. I love the Liska. I'm collecting my Liskas like you collect Krakens. And, you know, they're probably not going nowhere. But yeah, the Bite, man, I spent a good summer in the Bite FD and I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was sporty. I just had a good time.
Yeah. I had the pleasure, and I see Curtis is saying he loves his Liska. I had the pleasure of fishing with Jan Liska, visiting him a couple of times, and then unfortunately having to go to his memorial kayak fishing tournament after he passed away.
So let's kind of go into that, because a lot of people don't know, and I'm going to kind of let you tell the story about how that boat got named and about Jan.
Jan was a kind of almost a larger than life guy. You know, he was, I would say, 6'4", tons of energy. And I met him while I had gone over to Sweden. And he had become the head of the Jackson Kayak Europe team. And he was, everybody loved him. He was just such a gregarious guy. Like I said, he was kind of larger than life. And we actually went to this Viking thing where they had fighting and all that. And they're like, would anybody like to get up here and join in the demonstration of Viking fighting? He's like, yep. And he gets up, they give him a shield and a sword and a helmet, and he proceeds to beat the tar out of the other guy. And he's just got the biggest smile on his face. He's having so much fun. He doesn't realize that he's kind of going a little overboard, but just because he just was so excited about everything. And then you'd go fish with him, and it was just like so much fun. And like I said, I fished with him on 2 trips to Sweden, and because he was so well liked, people just gravitated to him. And he was also, during the winter months, he was an avid skier. And young man. I don't remember how old Jan was when he passed, but I mean, 20s. He was in his 20s, and unfortunately, he got caught in an avalanche. And so the wonderful thing about Jackson Kayak, they knew what an impact he had on that team of Jackson Kayak Europe. When the next boat came out, and he was all about introducing people to the sport, and he wanted a boat that was a good introductory type of boat, which I think the Liska was more than that.
No, absolutely.
But he wanted that kind of boat. So when that boat was coming out, and it was right in the time that he had passed, somebody suggested to name it the Liska. And Jackson didn't question it at all. They're like,
it was unanimous.
Yep. It's like, yep, we are doing that. And so, yeah, as it became the Liska, like I said, my wife and I actually traveled back to Sweden after he had passed for the first Jan Liska Memorial Kayak Fishing Tournament. I may be going to it again this year. And a huge gathering of people. And it was absolutely amazing. Another place that, if you have the chance to go, Sweden, the people are just fantastic. And I truly enjoyed my time there. And the whole Jackson Kayak European team.
Awesome.
I mean, we were there with guys from Germany and Sweden and the Czech Republic. I mean, it was amazing time, and just great people. And like I said, it turned out to be a fantastic boat, which, like I said, I really liked that boat.
Oh, yeah. And it's amazing. Like, every time we have this show or the Doc Talk show, like, the Liska comes up. It doesn't matter. Every time that we're on Doc Talk, the Liska makes its way.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's like its own phenomenon at this point. So for those of you that didn't know the story on how the Liska came to be, or where the Liska name came from, that is it.
Yeah, and
named
like
after
I said,
a pretty good dude.
it was so well deserving to have that boat named after him, because he was that kind of guy, and it was well deserving.
Now, as we move on here, Jim, what's next? I mean, you're about ready to go back out. Fishing is ahead.
Yeah, and that's what honestly, I mean, as I get ICAST and having meetings with, and that was the same question. It's like, well, what's ahead? And I honestly had to tell every one of my sponsors, like, and luckily they were all still behind me, but they're like, I had to tell them, I do not know, because COVID screwed me. I mean, it kind of put an end to my show initially because of all the travel. And then I parted ways with Heliconia. We had a great run. They were great people, but we had reached an end. And I still love those guys. But again, back surgery this year, or shoulder surgery, my 5th. And I had back surgery years ago, but I've had 4 injections in my spine this year. So finally, this last one feels like it took. So I'm hoping to get back on the water and get back to, I don't know that I'll ever be on TV again. I would love to, if some producer wants to step up or help me figure out how to self-produce. I will definitely be back on the World Wide Web.
Oh yeah.
I've committed to myself, because I used to do twice a week live shows.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I mean, just I got in a funk with not being able to fish. I mean, it's hard to talk about fishing.
Oh, I can imagine.
And what's going on when you can't even get out and do it yourself. So I got in a funk and I just stopped doing my live shows for the remainder of last year. And then the beginning of this year, just haven't had a chance yet. But by February, maybe sooner, I am going to get back to doing my live shows again and airing old episodes of the TV show with live commentary, because there's a couple seasons I still haven't aired yet. And getting back to doing more instructional videos that I used to do, and all the fun stuff. And hopefully that'll lead to me getting back on the road and doing some traveling and shooting. Jameson and I have talked about maybe him getting out here, and at least me. He was on my show so many times. He owes me to be on his show at least once.
There you go.
So hopefully that all comes together. And
maybe it's time for a podcast, dude.
Yeah,
I could see you being like a heck of a fishing podcast guy.
Well, I used to, my live shows I would repurpose as a podcast, but it wasn't. It was a repurpose. It wasn't like
right. It wasn't exactly the same.
Yeah. But it's I so enjoy it, and I so enjoy talking about it. Obviously, I haven't shut up for an hour here, so.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's time. It's like the Jim Sammons Worldwide Fishing Podcast.
I had some ideas for another TV show, honestly, that would involve more than kayak fishing, because I am more than kayak fishing. I fly fish.
Yeah.
I got a 22-foot pilot house sitting outside, which I love to spend time in offshore. So more types of fishing. So that there is out there in the wind, and it's got a name, and it's got the URL.
There you go.
But whether it all comes together, it's all through the grace of my wonderful wife, who has been, supportive of me doing this for, since the mid 90s, over, I don't know, what year is it now? So
23 or something like that.
Yeah.
Years ago.
And I was kayak fishing, they said my wife and I have been married 35 years. And so I started way back then. And thanks to her dad, who was like her dad's the one who got me in a kayak initially. Funny thing is, didn't fish.
Really?
He just loved to paddle. And it wasn't till I started doing the kayak fishing that then I would take him out kayak fishing, and got him on his first rooster fish, got him on his first yellowtail. But his whole thing, like I said, he loved to paddle, and gave me that love of paddling and the instruction on being a paddler.
Now, here's a question. Since my wife loves to paddle, does your wife love to paddle? Is she out there with you on a lot of days when you just head out for fun?
Not as much as she used to, but she does enjoy it. She does it. My wife, honestly, now that we have a nice pilot house boat, she loves to go out on the boat.
Yeah,
and we actually say, and it's not far from true, it's her boat. She just lets me drive it. The kayaks are all mine. The boat is hers.
There you go.
But she absolutely loves to be out on the ocean, and we spend a lot of good times on the ocean in our boat together.
Now, talking about your next step, obviously you've seen a lot of evolution in the sport of fishing over these years, and kayaks and graphs, like we was talking before the show. What are you most, like, when you look at how things have changed, what are you most fascinated with as far as things you've seen change?
The
best evolution.
Well, that's really hard. I would say the best thing, and a little bit of the worst thing, is that the companies have, because the sport has grown, each one of the companies has pushed the other one to make a better product. So the boats have gone from where we were taking a kayak and making it into a fishing boat to now, they are from the ground up really designed to be fishing boats. The negative to me on that is that because the general populace wants the big, wide, super stable pedal drive boat, it's gone away from, and I don't know, the purity, I guess,
that's fair,
of the paddling boat. And I mean, you can't even really find, you can, there are some out there. You can still find some high end paddling boats out there. A buddy of mine just got a carbon fiber one that's amazing. So I've told this story a million times, but and I bring up the Scupper Pro a lot because I spent a lot of years in that boat. I caught my first marlin in a Scupper Pro. Back then, 14'9", about this wide. I don't think my ass would fit in it anymore. The boat weighed 50 pounds. And because I had come from touring boats and we were around a lot of touring boat guys, they're like, yeah, it's a cool boat. It paddles well, but God, if it only weighed less, it's so heavy. So, and let's face it, the boats have done nothing but gotten bigger and heavier. And that's the hard, and honestly, that's a hard thing for me now, is just these boats have gotten so heavy. It's just dealing with them. I mean, there's no more throwing a boat on top. I mean, my Scupper Pro I'd carry over my head like a longboard. There's no more of that. There's no more throwing it up on top of the vehicle, on top of my truck, because I had a rack that was, up here.
No, I'm not.
So I trailer all my boats, and it's like
the Nar is heavy.
The Nar is a heavy boat. Now, I mean, granted, it's got all the features, but I've been in this business long enough to know that the story hasn't changed. People are still saying, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and this, and this, and throw in this, and this, and this. But can you make it lighter and less expensive?
Yeah, absolutely. And the guy at the boat show still looking at it going, I'd turn that over.
Right. May as well buy a boat.
Yep, I'd turn that over. There ain't no way I hope me.
What is Will saying?
He
Neither
does not miss.
Our butts get handled 6 hours and you're probably right, and that's why that was a big joy to me. Well, I'll tell you, and this is kind of an interesting story, and I don't know if we're running over here, but
nope,
so
you're fine.
I'm on a guided trip. I am guiding down in southern Baja, and my fleet of kayaks down there were mostly Scupper Pros, and then we had a few drifters, which were pretty wide for back then. And I had this lady come on the trip, and she was awesome, and she was not small. I mean, in the posterior region, and she's like, I like the Scupper Pro. And I'm like, really? She goes, yeah, I can sit in that boat all day. It's all comfortable. She goes, the day I used the drifter, I was dying. And I figured it out, honestly, is what happens. And this is what happened with me when we went to the Prowlers and the Tridents. The seats got wider and wider and wider and flatter, where the old Scupper Pro was narrow and it was contoured. And it actually, you would sit down and it would kind of cradle your butt, and it would give you that support. Where that's what was happening with her. She would get in there and she wasn't actually touching the bottom. It was catching her on the sides and giving her support, and it felt more comfortable. And I could sit back then in a Scupper Pro 12 hours, never think twice about it. When the Prowler came out, it was so much wider and flatter. I went to like 6 hours, and all of a sudden it's like, God dang, I am hurting. And so I made myself, excuse me, I took a seat from a wreck boat that was thick foam and contoured, and it filled up that space. And I put that into my prowler, and it gave me that support and felt so much better. Now, the downside, of course, you were still down in the boat and they were wet. And so you got swamp butt. But comfort wise, for me, the old Scupper Pro was as comfortable as I've ever been in a boat. And then jump forward to now these beach chair styles.
Oh, yeah.
They're not the Scupper Pro. They're not, to me, as comfortable as a Scupper Pro, but they're a million times better than sitting on the floor of the kayak like we did with the Prowlers and the Tridents. To me, they're much more comfortable, and you get air circulating, and just you're dry. So it's like once I sat in the beach chair style, I'm like, well, I'm never going back to the other one.
Came home dry for the first time.
Yeah. You weren't soggy, and because you were up a little bit higher, it was a little bit more comfortable on my lower back. That's why I love the Blue Sky.
Because
the Blue Sky was the first pedal boat that I ever could pedal and not die. Something about pedal boats is seated position, your feet were too high, and the ergonomics were not correct.
You end up slouching a bit.
So yeah, with the Blue Sky, since you're pedaling down, for me it was more ergonomically correct. Now I know with the NAR, it's up a little bit higher. I feel like the ergonomics are much, much better than some of the initial ones. And boy, what a great drive that Mark IV is. I mean, that thing, like I said, I'm not a peddler, but what a great leap forward that was.
Let's hear about your Ottawa River whitewater experience. What do you got here?
The video is out there.
Is it like a certain goose video?
No, because I didn't get millions of views and become famous because I got attacked by a goose. No, I was, excuse me, let me take a quick sip of water. On the Ottawa River with Will as my videographer.
Shout out, Will.
With Ken Whiting and Brendan Mark, the two head honchos at Heliconia, both former world champion whitewater kayakers. And they knew me. This is the first time I had done whitewater, and we were going to fish the Ottawa River, and you would run whitewater and then you'd fish and run whitewater, but we were doing it in sit on tops.
Mm-hmm.
And Ken had seen me, he'd seen my surf videos. He knew I could handle a boat in big water. Surf is very different than rivers. The thing about surf, no matter how big it is, there's a break between waves.
Right.
Rivers never stop.
No.
And the way the dynamics of a river are so different.
The hydraulics.
Water runs uphill. Who knew? It's amazing. So I learned a lot, but they took me to the Ottawa River, to one of the bigger rapids, and 99 out of 100 times somebody goes down there, they falls off their boat, they get flushed down the river. Well, Ken tells me, just follow me. I will lead you down this rapid. Okay, I'm nervous as heck because I'd never done whitewater at all. And literally, the first whitewater I do is the big rapid.
Oh, man.
And Will can chime in and tell us what rapid it is. I don't remember the name of it. But Ken starts leading me down. And we had watched raft after raft, because raft tours come down. Full rafts go through. Okay, it's McCoy's. So we'd watch raft go through, and we watch these big ass rafts get flipped, sending everybody in the water. I'm like, okay. But again, they'd get flushed down the rapids. So Ken's all, it's no problem. Just go for it. Well, just follow me. I'll take you on the perfect line. So go down, hit the very first big rapid, and I get knocked out of the boat. And I immediately, because I'm a comfort Joe's hole, right? So I'm back in the kayak and I'm ready to go. I'm ready, and we're still going down the rapids. And Ken's like, well, he can handle that, no problem. So again, just follow me. And he points down river. And you got to understand, big rapids, it's loud. I mean, it's a roar. And he points down river and says, go that way. Except he didn't say go that way. He said, don't go there. My. And when you're following somebody down a river, it's not like you're following somebody on flat water. You're not kind of following because you're moving down river. Mm-hmm. And so if you're going down, you feel like you're following them, but you're actually over here, not here. So anyway, so I follow him, but I'm back over here going where I thought he said, go this way. And I hit Joe's hole. And it's well known for eating people. And unlike being in a whitewater boat where you're stuck in there, or unlike Ken, who is in a sit on top with thigh straps on, I'm on a sit on top, nothing holding me in other than my feet. So I hit the hole and I literally slid off the kayak and went straight off the bow.
Oh, shoot.
And then got recirculated through the hole. And if you understand how that water works, when water goes over a rock, it pushes down and then comes back up. And because of this pressure, it's pulling this water back. So you
were in the washing machine.
It's called being recirced. Now, the other big problem that happened here was, again, and this was early this is only, I think, and Will says the bubbles also remove the buoyancy. Yes. And having the wrong PFD on also removes your buoyancy. Again, this was early in the days, and I would show up at a trip or show up at a location, and we would use their gear, whatever they had. And I didn't bring my own PFD. And so it's like, here's a PFD. And I am PFD crazy. I mean, I tell everybody wear PFDs, wear them tight, yada, 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 wear them nice and snug. Well, I put on this other PFD. It doesn't fit me the way I'm used to. I didn't snug it down the way I normally did. So I'm not only getting recirculated, but the PFD is now up here because it's getting floated up and it's over my face. And I can't get out. I mean, I'm just getting... The scariest thing it is, I mean, I've been on the water a long time. I've dealt with a lot of marlin and sharks and everything. This was hands down the scariest thing that ever happened to me on a kayak. And thankfully, I blame Ken for sending me down there. But thankfully, Ken is also former world champion kayaker. And he has the skills to then paddle back up into the hole, side surf it, and try to drag me out. And we've all seen the cartoon where the guy's going down. It's like the hand of God, and this blasting uses their hand going down. And that's literally what it was.
Wow.
Now, this whole thing probably took seconds, but in my head, it took an hour,
Oh, yeah.
But Ken was able to slide up in there, and he was set. He told me he was at the point where he was going to bash me in the head to keep from pulling him in. So and that way, if I would relax enough, I'd probably just get flushed out. But luckily, I was able to get up there, hold onto his boat. He side surfed it and was able to get me out. So he gets me out of the hole and I get down. Now Will was actually videoing, but he was in a big rubber raft and Brendan was manning the raft. And so they were sitting down below where all this happened. So again, this video is out there on the kayak fishing shows, on Kayak Fishing Tales on our YouTube channel. But he gets me out. We get down below the hole and he just kind of dragged me over to the raft. And so I get to the raft. I'm exhausted. I am 100% spent. The adrenaline has just rushed through my body. And And I go up there. Will's found it.
For those that are interested, there's a comment on the Facebook feed with the link.
So I go up there and hang onto the side of the boat, and Brendan's like, "You okay, man?" And he's patting me on the back on the PFD and drags me up into the raft. Well, like I told you, all these tourist boats had come down and people had gotten dumped and flushed. Right on the shore, just inside of where they're dragging me up, is a whole bunch of probably like high school girls who had fallen out of this raft. And they're dragging me up, and my pants are down around and I'm just like, my butt is just right at them. I'm like, are my pants down? They're, yep. I'm like, oh, awesome. So that was my brush with death on the Ottawa River. I will never forget it. It was, like I said, I think it was our second year of shooting. Well, maybe our third. And I sucked it up, let my adrenaline calm down, and sat in the raft for a little bit. Got back in my kayak and ran rapids the rest of the day and fished the rest of the day, and had an amazing, amazing trip. But I did almost die. That's the closest I've ever come to dying in a kayak.
I feel like we ought to bring Will in. We need to do like another episode. We need to like do a doc talk, but like have Will here with you.
And that'd be great, because stories. We have so many stories.
We're doing it
together because we spent so much time together. Will didn't shoot all of my show. I think all but the last 2 years, 3 years. So we spent a lot of time together, a lot of cars together, a lot of hotel rooms together. And we would bicker. We knew how to push each other's buttons, but I love the guy, and we had an absolute wonderful time. And he's one of my closest friends. And it's like I said, we definitely we had our little bickering sessions, but we knew how to make each other work too. You know, it's like when he didn't want to work, I did. When I didn't want to work, because he would, hey, we've got stuff we need to do. We have sponsor obligations, stuff that has to be done. And so he would get on me, and it's like, Jim, come on, you got to pick up the energy. It's like, dude, I've been in this kayak all day. I'm exhausted. Doesn't matter. We still have work to do. Come on, let's do this. We'll knock it out, and then we'll have some beers, And so we worked well together. I think he got the best out of me. And we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun doing it.
He definitely has a good habit and a good way to get the best out of people. And I will give you that 100%.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And like I said, I probably wouldn't have done it as long if it hadn't been he and I doing it together.
Well, a future episode of Doc Talk, when we can have we'll have a panel, and we'll bring it all in here together. Now, with that being said, world traveled. You're world traveled. Best beer.
I've been to a lot of places.
Best beer.
Best beer?
Where's the best beer?
San Diego, California. Ballast Point Brewing Company.
There you go. There you guys have.
I'm not gonna lie. they have my hands down favorite beer. But with that said, I wouldn't pass up a trip to Panama to go get a beer there, or a trip to Sweden to have a beer there. It's all the company you're drinking the beer with.
It is. But you got to ask. I mean, because there's somebody out there that wants to know, like, where is the best beer come from?
There's a lot of good beer in San Diego. I'm not going to lie, because we have so many microbreweries. I mean, San Diego is on the cutting edge of microbreweries, so there's a lot of good ones. Honestly, when we were on trips, it was usually fish hard. Mm-hmm. But my wife would always ask, and not only my wife, but other people always, it's like, what did you like about this place? I have no idea. I was on the water fishing. I loved the location we were at, and I loved that lodge or whatever, but get beyond that a lot of times. And I wish I could have done more of the other stuff, but
a lot of times when you're filming, it's daylight to dark.
Yeah, we were working, and you turn a camera on, fish get lockjaw. You turn a camera on, the wind goes sideways. And we have those trips where, we're going to be there 2 weeks. We're going to get 2-3 episodes, and you're lucky to get one. And then you have the ones like the Baja, where we got wiped out by a hurricane, but we had an easy episode the first day. We got 2 marlin the first day. We did a trip. Speaking of Will, we did a trip to, and if you haven't had a chance to fish Canada, anywhere in Canada, there's so much water up there. It's an amazing places to fish up there. We were in the Northwest Territories, as I recall, and I get everything confused now. And we were there for a week, and it was all fishing for big northern pike, and just massive pike. And the first day of fishing, I said, we're fishing for 7 days. First day of fishing, we caught a lot of fish. I mean, just a ridiculous number of fish. And there was 3 of us fishing. It was myself and Ken Whiting and that other guy, because I can't remember. So the second day is like, okay, Will, you're on camera. You're the camera guy. We want you to keep track. Actually keep track. It's easy to say, I caught 100 fish today. We want you to count how many fish we caught today. We each caught over 100 northern pike.
Wow.
And big quality fish. So 7 days of fishing. That's day 2. I mean, how much footage do you need?
Right. That's like
halfway through the second day, Will's like, do not talk to me. Do not call me. Unless you have a 60-inch pike, I don't want to hear from you. I'm fishing. So we have 7 days of fishing, and he got to fish a good portion of it. Probably caught the biggest fish on the trip, as he always does. He gets to fish for a short amount of time and always seems to pull one out of his butt and gets one of the bigger fish. He got some nice tarpon when we were down in Costa Rica. We were in North Carolina, and catching big AJs, and he gets to fish for like the last 10 minutes and catches a cobia. I had never caught a cobia, and he catches Jeff Goudreau. Sorry. Thank you, Will. I love having you on here. Remind me of people's names. You're better than me. You're younger than me. But yeah, so he catches a big old cobia. We're in Hawaii, struggling on catching fish. I mean, it was just really, really tough. He's in the boat. We're just trying to find fish. So he has one of my rods, drops one of my lures down, catches a wahoo on a metal jig, no, straight fluorocarbon, no wire, and he catches a wahoo. I've never caught a wahoo off my kayak. He is so freaking lucky on these trips. And that's why we get to bust his butt about it. And that's why we should have him on here and do it together, because, like I said,
it'll be hilarious. It'll be a good show. Doc fun. Talk. We're going to schedule it. We'll get it scheduled out here this next week and try to get you guys both on at the same time. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
That would be fun.
So, and we get even more fun.
Yeah.
Let's see. So as we close this thing out, thank the people, Mr. Jim, that you would like to thank, and say hello to who you need to say hello to, and tell the people where to find you.
Well, if I'm going to thank anybody, I would thank my wife, like I mentioned earlier, that has put up with me doing this for all these years and has supported me 100% while I've done it, with not too many questions. She makes the real money. She has the benefits, and so it's through her support that has allowed me to do that. So if I'm going to thank anybody, it's that. I've got some great sponsors who are still on board with me, like Siegler Reels and Seagar and Jackson Kayak, of course, who I still work really closely with, and Naqua Batteries, Yak Attack. I mean, all great people, and Maui Gym, NRS. I think I have NRS. They are absolutely awesome. So yeah, those are the ones I would thank, and I thank all the people that I've met over the years being able to do this, and Will, of course, for riding along with me for so long, and Heliconia for starting this with me. I was their first TV show. Now I think they've got like 5 or 6 of them.
We've got several now, yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot
Will
of
says
people.
your chiropractor.
My chiropractor. You know, I can't thank my chiropractor because my chiropractor has never done anything for my back. He actually, when I go to the chiropractor, he laughs at me. He goes, "Jim, you know I can't help your back." He goes, "I can't. Your back's a wreck." So it's more like better living through pharmaceuticals, injections in my spine that have helped the most. But yeah, it's like those. If people want to find me, you know, at jimsammons.com, the kayakfishingshow.com, Kayak Fishing Tales is our YouTube channel. And of course, we're very active. We're very active on Facebook and a little bit of Instagram.
A little bit of Instagram.
Like, yeah, I don't do a ton of, yeah, the inventor of Vicodin. Yeah. Travel with Vicodin always.
And for those of you that don't know, you can pick up your Orion cooler and Jackson Kayak at jacksonkayak.com. You can pick up your Orion cooler, but you can browse our boats and find your local Jackson Kayak dealer at jacksonkayak.com. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Jim, thanks for being a guest.
Hey, thanks.
I appreciate you, dude.
Thanks everybody who watched and asked questions. That was super fun, and hopefully we can do it again. And
yep.
I had a
Thank
great
you for
time.
the side banner.
I love talking kayak fishing. So
yep, absolutely.
I haven't had a chance to do it in a long time, so I really appreciate the invitation because
you'll be back in a couple weeks.
It remotivates me. This remotivates
me. Back in a couple weeks, I guarantee it. So that being said,
my dog is coming in to say it's time to be done.
There you go. Well, we will see you guys on the next one. Orion Podcast will be back. Check us out on Doc Talk this week, Thursday night at 8:00. We'll see you then.
All right. Bye. Thanks, man.
See you.